Welcome to Wine Soundtrack USA. Listen to the passion with which producers narrate their winery and their world. In 30 answers, discover their stories, personalities, and passions.
Hello, friends and listeners of Wine Soundtrack. This is Allison Levine, and today I am in Lodi, California with Kyle Larner, the president of Harney Lane Winery. Welcome, Kyle, and tell us about Harney Lane.
Thank you. Yeah, pleasure being here, and I'm excited to talk with you today. Yeah, we're a wonderful, home-based winery that started in 2006, but our roots go back to the year 1900. We're actually fifth generation on the family farm.
And now you're in Lodi. I know that you work with estate fruit. How many acres do you have?
Yeah, so we farm nearly 600 acres here in the Lodi appellation. We currently use the best of those acres for our own wine productions here at Harney Lane.
And what are you producing?
Oh gosh, we run the gamut. So we start off with beautiful Albariños through lush Chardonnays, fruit-forward Zinfandels, all the way into Petite Sirahs and Cabernets. So Lodi is just an amazing place to grow wine grapes.
Yes, I've had the pleasure to taste some of them, and yes, all delicious so far. So, and where are your wines available? Are they available in different markets or just in California?
Yeah, so these are small lot handcrafted wines with lower production. So we're only producing about 8,000 or so cases annually. So you're not going to find us out there on the grocery store shelf necessarily, but we are available online at harneylane.com. You can call us. We can get those shipped out to you in a moment's notice.
So tell me, what is your first memory relevant to wine?
Well, my first memory actually probably started in college working in the restaurant industry. I had the pleasure of working at Biba's in Sacramento, which is Biba Caggiano was a world-class chef that was producing some crazy Northern Italian stuff over there. And I think that was my first interaction with wine at any scale. Prior to that, my family really wasn't into it, and I married into this business, so I wasn't really born and raised in the grape world.
So when you think back to the wines you've drunk, is there one particular wine that stands out as one of those aha moments? Was it something that kind of drove you into joining this world, or something in your years of learning and training that just was like, oh my God?
I think way back when in that restaurant scene in college, and I was at a catering event one evening, and there were a few wines left over, and someone said, here, take this wine home and try it. And I had never really consumed or had much interest in wine at that point. Happened to be a Rombauer Zinfandel. And it's probably sat on a shelf for a couple of years, and something had happened, and I opened it up and I thought, wait a second, what's going on here? This is not what I ever expected. And kind of piqued my interest as to what was going on in that side of the world with that particular beverage. And so I would say that was my one defining moment in saying, hey, maybe I should look into this a little more.
So now that you have many years of experience in the wine industry, what do you tend to drink? Are you mostly drinking local wine, your own wine, or from other places?
Let's see, what day is it today? I really try to, we're busy, and so I'm not always out there seeking out the next new wine and stuff, but I am always trying to taste new varieties, new regions, new producers, just to get a take on their perspective of the grape that we're working with here ourselves. And so I'm not really tied into one particular stretch, or I've got this thing going on, but there's tons of great producers, a lot in California, and I tend to gravitate to those because it's so easy to access for us.
Absolutely. So is there a particular wine that you opened up recently that drank pretty well?
Oh, well, there's a lot of wines that drink very well. One of the shockers for us was our our new rosé that our home ranch rosé that we just released this week. Fruit, it was amazing, but there's a lot of great wines. We just had a wine from Pennyroyal, and I'm terrible because I can't remember even what the variety was. No, I remember. It was a blend of Chardonnay and Sauvignon Blanc. It was fascinating.
Ooh, interesting.
Yeah, very small producer. I think they are part of the Navarro family.
Huh, interesting. So, do you think there's a such thing as a perfect variety?
Is there anything perfect in this world?
And then I know you had mentioned to me that one of your wines just won a big score. You won a double gold at the San Francisco Chronicle competition, which is wonderful news. And I'm curious, overall, what's your opinion of critics and scores?
Yeah, no, that was beautiful. Our home ranch Chardonnay actually won best of class of the double gold. And so we're very, very proud of that. Critics and scores, I think they're good sounding boards for us to really see what people's perspectives are on the products we're producing. I don't know that it necessarily sells another bottle of wine for us. But it is fun. It's competition is competition, and you send something off and you've done your best with it, and now you want to see how it's evaluated. And so we really like that perspective of it.
Yeah. So as a consumer, red, white, or rosé?
What? It's always white, but rosé's hip right now. Yeah.
And still or sparkling?
Always sparkling.
Champagne or from somewhere else?
Depends.
Oh. I know we were talking a little bit earlier about how great food is with wine, and I'm wondering how you approach food and wine pairing. Do you think that there are rules that you have to follow, the hard and fast kind of white wine and fish or red wine and meat? Do you take a different approach, or do you take a come what may attitude towards food and wine?
I think we like to overcomplicate things. I think there's definitely some beautiful interactions with foods and wines. But honestly, I prefer to tell people to drink what you love and eat what you love to eat. And they'll kind of do their own things together. We will take particular cheeses and pair them with wines, and they will complement beautifully or they will contrast beautifully, and so you'll see some different perspectives. A wine by itself or a wine with a protein are going to be two different beasts sometimes, and so there's a lot of fun and levity that can be had with that. But to get so technical, it really just is a food and a beverage, right?
That's true. That is what it is. It is a meal. So occasionally we imbibe a little too much when we're having a lot of fun. Do you have any magical cures for hangovers? Have you figured out the golden rule?
I don't think that's ever happened to me.
That you've drunk too much or found the cure?
Both. Wait. Okay. Yeah.
So for somebody who hasn't had the opportunity to taste your wines yet, what do you think they're missing out on?
Well, there's something special about what we do, and I think it does absolutely set us apart from other producers in that we are 100% estate grown. And we have 5 generations of farming heritage in the wine grape business that have been passed on to us. Over the past 15 or so years that we've been producing wines, we've really been able to reflect on the uniqueness of the vineyard, really pulling out and identifying what is special about that, what flavor profile is unique in this particular location that we can then pronounce in the wine and show the world, or let the vineyard essentially tell its story in the bottle. And so those are the things I think that most consumers don't gain the perspective on, especially when you're just heading out and just shopping wherever and picking something up. These are small lot, handcrafted wines that we follow from the moment we prune the vine all the way until it graces our lips. in the bottle. And so there's a lot that happens in between. It's that Disneyland kind of thing. We make it look easy, but it's highly complicated. But there's definitely some fun to be had by tasting small lot produced wines that you may not always have access to.
Yeah, absolutely. And before we sat down, I had the pleasure to go out into the vineyard with you and went into the Lizzie James Vineyard, which is Zinfandel on sandy soils that was planted in 1904. 1904. Pretty amazing.
It is pretty amazing. I'm always humbled when I walk into those vineyards, because you walk through and you look at those old vines and you think about all of the hands that have graced those vines and tended to them and cared for them over the years, and what it took to keep that alive all that time, right? And I am a mere steward of those vines at this point, and I hope to pass that on to the next generation and allow that to continue. But yeah, what a sobering experience to walk through there, right?
So if space aliens were to land on your property, which of your wines would you want to welcome them with?
Well, one of my wines, it's going to be a party, hopefully, so it's going to be our Albariño. If they don't look too nice, I might show them some MD 2020, and they may hit the road and say, no way, Jose. So.
Well, the Albariño is very crisp and fresh with really pretty white peach aroma, so I think that's a good welcome. So, you know, as you said, you married into a family of 5 generations of grape growers, but now you've spent over 20 years in the vineyards now making wine. We know that every vintage tells a story. Do you think that each vintage, how much variation do you see from vintage to vintage in a region like Lodi?
So, in these vineyards, what we have really identified is that there is a single base or a flavor profile that each vineyard has, and it's very unique to it. Then the fun part about these small lot wines we produce is that we get to wrap the season around that. And so when you taste our Lizzie James Zinfandel that was planted back in 1904, there's going to be an underlying characteristic of Lizzie that rears itself in every single vintage. But then you get to taste the slight variation, because one season is going to be different to the next. You're going to have heavy rainfall years, you're going to have light rainfall years, you're going to have a warm summer, you're going to have a cool summer. And so those then get to interject the subtle influences and the nuances to what that vineyard is telling you. So it's actually really fun to kind of look at that and you know, taste through those perspectives.
Yeah, so if you really see it when, as a consumer, you get to taste a couple of vintages. So you see the commonality and then the nuance difference.
Right.
So, do you have any good luck rituals that you do when you're starting harvest or finishing harvest or throughout the season?
If you can see my hands, I've discovered over the past 20 some odd years of farming that I get to control about 1 inch of as far as my arms can reach. And so...
no superstition in there?
Well, you know, what I've discovered is that I control very little of actually what is given to us and what happens around us. And so ritual-wise, we just go into it really just very optimistic and know what we've got going on. It's kind of funny. Your body over the time knows when harvest is coming. Because you work all season, you're working, you're watching, you're tending to the vines, you're tasting fruit now that's ripening, and then you know that long days are ahead of you, and you almost feel this surge of energy just kind of develop, because you know that all of the work you've put in through the entire season is about to come to fruition, and that fruit's going to come off, and then we get to work with it in the winery. And so there's this level of excitement, not necessarily a ritual, but we all talk about it here. We all go through this one spot where we know harvest is about to happen. And it's just your body just gets geared into that to know that that's coming up. So
instead of looking for like predictors or omens that are going to tell you what a harvest is going to be, you just sort of listen to your body and it tells you.
Yeah, and you know, because I know I can't control all of this stuff and wish things towards, you know, good success, it's just, let's just go do it and let's work with what we've got. and make it happen. There was one season where I watched, we're about 2 days away from harvesting our Zinfandel. And we'll get these tropical storms pass in that kind of wrap over the Sierras. And midday, sometimes they'll back up off the Sierras and they'll come over the top of us. And all I saw was this wall of black cloud coming towards us. And then the rains ensued. And it wasn't just a couple sprinkles. It was just a deluge. It just poured. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, we've worked this whole season. And now what do I do? So I grabbed a chair and a beer, and I sat on my crush pad and I watched it rain because there was nothing I could do about it.
What a great attitude. So even though you don't have a lot of control, I know you spend a lot of time in your vineyards, as you told me, that's your office when you're out in the vineyard. So when you're out in your office, you're alone, but you're surrounded by your vines. Do you talk to them? Have you been known to talk to them? And if so, what do you say to them? And especially those old vines, we were looking at them, these gnarled up, amazing vines that are just so extraordinary that have their own little personalities. So how do you talk to them?
Yeah, I don't know if it's necessarily spoken words, unless I see something wrong, and then there's probably some words that shouldn't come out. But no, it's really, it's very interesting. You can't help but walk through the vineyard, and I touch the vines. I'm touching the clusters. I'm looking at it's very interesting. Going through Lizzie James, each vine has its own unique personality because we have vines that are, 117 years old in there. We have vines that might be 10 years old in there because it's a replant and it's a new start where a vine is perished. But they all have their own personalities. And so it's more of a visual, almost, I'm looking at you and you need some help here, or I want to do this to you there. But I always find that even if I'm not thinking about the vineyard, I'm always grabbing an arm or a trunk, or it's the texture. It's just, there's something about what happens out there. Yeah.
More of a telepathic communication,
I guess. Yeah, I never really thought about it. But now you're bringing something out in me. I got to think about this a little more.
Later, when you're walking through the vineyards, you're going to be like, oh my God, I really do talk out loud. I never realized it.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that out. Now I'm ruined for life.
So when you were little, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Well, I thought I was going to be a policeman, right? No, my dad, my uncle, my brother-in-law, my cousin were all in law enforcement, and so I kind of thought I was going to head in that direction. And as I got older, I realized that probably wasn't going to be the direction that was going to be best for me. And so then I thought I was going to become a banker. And then I graduated about the time that all the S&L scandals hit and the banking industry flipped upside down. I thought, well, this is good timing. Little did I know that I was going to become a farmer, which I never in my wildest dreams thought I would be. And
you're a farmer.
And I'm a farmer, and it's been one of the most rewarding experiences that I think I could ever have. A banker, a police officer, although I probably would have been retired by now, living life in Cabo or doing something different, it would not have been nearly as rewarding as what we get to do here. So.
Absolutely. So when you're not working, how do you spend your free time?
I love the mountains. And maybe I do talk to things because I go up in the hills and it's just quiet and you hear the air whistling through the trees and the smell of the dirt up there is so different and you just kind of disappear. And so we'll go on a hike, we'll, find a place. We were just up in Idaho discovering up there and it's like, oh my gosh, this world is amazing. And so high elevation, cold mountains. That's it. Snow. Part of that too is that means that the vines are dormant and I can step away for a moment and not have to worry about it also. So,
are there any particular sports that you like to do other than hiking? If hiking's a sport, that's an activity, I guess.
Yeah. No, I love to fly fish. I've done that for years. I've traveled all over doing that. But mostly it's hiking, kayaking. I'm in my mid-50s now, so, I'm starting to feel things a little bit in the body that everyone warned me about, but,
I think it's bending over those old vines and trying to talk to them that has hurt you. So, when you're planning a romantic evening with your wife, who you work with here, what sort of wines get opened to set the mood for romance?
Romance, wow. Well, you know, a good buttery Chardonnay to open up the evening never hurts.
Kind of loosens and lubricates the evening.
You know, and then it depends on how the evening's going. You know, if it's winter and we're sitting by the fire just relaxing, it might be a nice Cabernet. If we're having just a nice meal out on the patio, we might bring some levity with some fruit in the Zinfandel. But yeah, they are mood strikers, you know, and so we will go down based on kind of how we're feeling into the wine cellar and say, how can we turn this evening around sometimes, you know?
So when you think back, is there a piece of advice that you were ever given that, you know, you sort of live by or that inspires you? And who gave it to you?
I can't tell you who gave it to me, but I know it was in my 20s because I thought I knew it all. And someone told me one time, if you think you know everything, you don't know anything. And I don't know why that stuck with me, but I've always lived by that mantra. There's always something to learn. There's always something new. Even down to we're planting a new block of Chardonnay with some amazing clones behind the tasting room. I decided I needed to learn. We do it all the time, but to actually take on and install all of the irrigation out there. We decided to do that ourselves. Normally we would hire that out because I am always learning something new. And I've learned a number of things from that. But over time, I've learned that I can tear down a tractor engine if I need to. And, you know, if something's wrong electrically, we can deal with it. So you learn by experience and go into it with the thought that something is going to come out of that, and not just expect that you got it all figured out. Because if you ask my wife, I never have it figured out.
And if you could give our listeners a piece of advice, what would you tell them?
Well, I would say keep wine in your fold because it really is a beverage unlike anything else. It's a very social. It spurs conversation. We see it here all the time. It brings friends together. Wine just needs to be a part of your world.
When you look back at your career, what would you say is one of your proudest achievements to date?
Honestly, I would say establishing the winery in a business of 5 generations, I think was probably one of our biggest accomplishments. Being in the forefront of what's happening in this Lodi region in California, and really showing people what is capable of our world, but also the region itself, what we're capable of producing here. I think it's been a lot of fun going from just a farming business to really a producer of world-class wines. And so I think that's probably been the most gratifying thing for us.
It's a great achievement. And you have such a future ahead of you with delicious wines, I must say, from personally tasting them. Complete this sentence for me. A table without wine is like...
going to the dentist.
So if you imagined a scenario, we're sitting here at a table. We've got windows surrounding us, looking outside. If there were paparazzi outside, pretty excited about who was sitting at this table with us, drinking your wine, who do you wish you could be sharing a bottle of wine with? Specifically, Harney Lane Winery, of course, not just any wine.
Oh, man, that would be a good one. Man, there's like a million things I could think of, but you know, honestly, based on California, I'm gonna say Ronald Reagan. I think it'd be very, very interesting conversation to have with a glass of wine.
Interesting. Like, wow. Usually I get a celebrity or a deceased family member. So, if you were being placed on a deserted island, okay, and you had to take 3 wines with you, what would they be?
Oh gosh, you're killing me. Do I have to be on a deserted island?
At least you get to take wine with you.
Yeah. Well, label-wise, I don't know that I would say anyone specific, but there's got to be an Albariño, because it's going to be warm, I have a feeling, and that's got to do it. I would say I'm definitely going to need a great single vineyard Zin for a lonely evening. And
Old Vine, of course.
Old Vine, absolutely. And I've got to have a great bottle of Cab to celebrate when someone finds my sorry rear end and hauls me home.
Well, well, hopefully that it's a very luxurious place that you want to be. So, before we finish, as I've warned you, we play a little game at the end where we pair wine with music. And because it conjures up so much, like music makes us feel a certain way. And as we've discussed, wine makes you feel a certain way. So when you put them together, sometimes they make you, they work in harmony. So as I've had the pleasure to sit down and taste some of your wines, I want you to pair with some of the wines from your portfolio. So let's start with your Albariño, which you would give to the space aliens if they came.
Yeah. Albariño's got to go with little Bob Marley.
And you have 2 Chardonnays that I tried. One of them, the Home Ranch, which was more neutral oak. Right? No. Or did I get that right? Opposite. The Scottsdale. Scottsdale with more neutral oak. Yeah. Really kind of crisp acidity and fresh.
Yeah. Adam Levine.
Okay. And then, of course, the Home Ranch Chardonnay, which was more French oak and a little more creamier with more of that butterscotch nose.
Yeah, that could go with a lot of different things. I don't know, pass.
Okay. Okay, Lizzie James, Old Vine Zinfandel.
Lizzie's got a little Mozart, I think. Yeah.
And your Petite Sirah.
Petite Sirah is just a big fat party, so that's going to be a dance mix with various artists.
Okay. And your Rosè.
Rosè is, oh man, that is a good summer mix of I'd love to throw that in with a big fat country artist just to make them think twice about it. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. A country artist. There you go. Well, see, you passed. Okay, you survived. So, I want to thank you so much for joining us today. But Kyle, before we finish, I want to know if there was one place at the top of your bucket list, a wine region to go explore, where is that?
Oh, man, there's a ton. I really want to head into various regions of Italy, mostly because wine and food pair so well, and there's so much history in this whole process. We're so young here.
Yeah.
Really,
even though you have 100-year-old vines.
We do, but we've grown, but to grow and produce, and you're talking about generation after generation, and there's so much knowledge there. And so I would love to take about 6 months and travel that entire country and just really see what's going on and bring some of that perspective back.
And for our listeners, we should encourage them to come to Lodi and add that to the top of their list. And if they come to Lodi, how can they visit you?
Yeah, no, our tasting room is open 7 days a week. We're always here. We're centrally located. If you intersect Sacramento and San Francisco, you're going to land right on Lodi's doorstep. If you're coming from out of state, we have some amazing landmarks within 2 hours of us. We have the city of San Francisco, which is amazing. We have Lake Tahoe and Yosemite in our backyard. And so this is a destination area to come to. But what you're going to find is a great farming community that has great wines, great restaurants, tons of things to do. The Mokelumne River to kayak on, all kinds of different things to play with. And there's always the ability to have a glass of wine in your hand when you're doing all of it. So.
And you should have a Harney Lane wine.
Absolutely.
So before we go, just remind our listeners how they can find your wines. If they don't come here and taste in the tasting room.
Yeah, you can absolutely find us on harneylane.com. You can call us and just ask around, because we ship wine all over the country already to a lot of consumers, and I will bet there will be someone in your neighborhood that may have heard of us. So.
And if they haven't, they should.
Absolutely.
Kyle, thank you so much for joining us on Wine Soundtrack.
My pleasure. This has been a great time. Thanks so much for inviting.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to a new episode of Wine Soundtrack USA. For details and updates, visit our website, winesoundtrack.com.